In this AMLbites on the new Authorised Corporate Service Provider ACSP scheme at Companies House, we delve further into identity verification IDV and discuss what you need to do if you decide to offer verification services to your clients. I'm Michelle Giddings, Head of AML and Professional Standards at ICAEW, and I take lead operational responsibility for the AML supervision of our firms. One of the key elements of the new Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act is identity verification. Under new provisions, identity verification, IDV, for directors and the equivalent such as LLP members or people with significant control and anyone filing at Companies House on behalf of a company is becoming mandatory. IDV for directors and PSCs launched on the 8th of April 2025, and it's currently voluntary but will become mandatory from the 18th of November 2025. The verification process is designed to deter people trying to incorporate and use companies for illegal purposes and to give people using the register greater confidence that directors and PSCs of companies are who they say they are. There are two routes for directors and PSCs to meet IDV requirements. Most people will do it directly through Companies House using the Government One login system, but verification can also be done via third-party providers, including accountants. If your firm wishes to provide IDV services to clients, you need to be registered as an authorised corporate service provider. If you want to carry out IDV checks on your clients and submit that information to Companies House, you'll need to register. Once registered as an ACSP, you will be expected to verify individuals to the same standard as those verifying directly through the Companies House service. To support the process, Companies House has produced comprehensive guidance on how to meet the verification standard and comply with your legal responsibilities as an ACSP. The steps laid out in the guidance are minimum checks, and you must complete every step to verify someone's identity. Checks can be carried out remotely or in person. You can also use commercial identity verification providers or platforms, but in this case, you're still responsible for deciding whether the required information provided by the person being verified is genuine. There are very strict procedures around how ACSPs must verify individuals. You must follow the prescribed steps, and there is a list of documents that can be used as evidence for identity, which will depend to some extent on how you'll be checking documents submitted as evidence. Step 1 is to ask for information about the person. They'll need to tell you their full name and any former names, the date of birth, home address history for the last 12 months, and an email address. Step 2 is then to get evidence to verify the person's identity. You'll need to ask to see documents as evidence to verify the person's identity. Remember that you'll need to keep copies of the documents for 7 years from the date you complete the identity check. You'll not need to submit copies when you tell Companies House that you verified someone's identity, but they will ask for information about the documents. For example, you might have to give a document reference number or equivalent, an expiry date, or a country of issue if the document has one. There are two options that you can use to gather the evidence. The first is around where you use identification document validation technology, IDVT, that can validate the cryptographic features of the document. Cryptographic features of identity documentation are security features that correctly identify the person or organization that issued the document. The person will need to provide you with, for example, a biometric or machine-readable passport. If you're using technology to do all the checks, then you must be able to evidence that it's completed every step. The second option is that if you're checking the documents by a person, and that could either be remotely or in person, and you must be satisfied that the process you use is sufficient to validate the documents provided. The person being verified will need to provide 2 documents in total, and these are a mixture of a prescribed list of Group A and Group B documents. Group A includes things like the passport or driver's license, and Group B are things like birth or marriage certificates or civil partnership certificates or council tax statements. The third step is to check that the evidence is real. So if the evidence is being checked by a person, they must be trained in detecting false documents by a specialist training provider. This could be any organisation that follows the Home Office Best Practice Guide. It's important to check identity documents for signs of tampering and query if there are any signs of damage. And it might be that you need to contact the issuing authority to check if you have concerns about a document. Step 4 is to check that it's a real identity and belongs to the person claiming it. So you'll need to check that the documents confirm the person's name and date of birth, the cryptographic features on the document match the information that provided by the person if you're using IDVT to check the document. The person needs to physically match the photo that's on or goes with the document. And you need to confirm that they're a real person. So if you're verifying them remotely, you'll need to clearly see their face to be able to compare it with the photo that's on the identity document. Step 5 is to keep records of all of your identity checks. And as we mentioned before, you must keep them for 7 years from the date you complete the identity verification. And that's a different time period to that for AML checks, for example. And then finally, step 6, you make the decision if you can verify the person's identity. You must decide if you're satisfied the person is who they claim to be and you've been able to verify them to the required standard. You can then go onto the Companies House website and complete the process as an ACSP to record that you have verified the individual's identity. Companies House current data suggests that the one login system can IDV 96 to 97% of all people on the register. So that system, the one login system, has the capability to do the majority of what Companies House needs it to do. But there will be people that one login can't process, such as PEPs, people on sanctions lists, and people without the documents that you need to use one login, such as a biometric passport or a photo driving license. And that's where the ACSP community can really support IDV. Whereas one login is a standard automated process, ACSPs have a wide range of options or documents at their disposal to verify identity with. And I've mentioned a very small number of the documents that could be used, but there's an extensive list of alternatives if someone can't present the gold standard of the passport with the chip in it. But it is important to remember that some of these individuals that come to you to ask to have their identity verified could be high risk. And if you get it wrong, the consequence for your firm could be serious. If you fail to comply with the required standard, Companies House can remove you from the ACSP register, which means you will not be able to file on clients' behalf in future or provide the IDV service anymore. And furthermore, if you lose your status as an ACSP, any individuals that you have verified in the past will have that verification removed and they'll need to get it done again by a new ACSP. That means the repercussions of not verifying appropriately could have a significant impact, including reputational damage, so think long and hard before taking on that responsibility. ICAEW doesn't have an AML supervisory remit over work to file documents on behalf of clients or for IDV. It's entirely policed and enforced by Companies House. But having said that, we do think that our firms need to recognise the engagement risks associated with the ACSP work, and in particular IDV. You'll need to ask yourself why an individual has come to you to verify their identity, because there's a risk that those who don't want to reveal their identity might try to exploit ACSPs. Clearly, if you've had a client for a number of years and you know them well, then this risk will be significantly lower. But if an individual walks in off the street and asks you to verify their identity, you have to think quite carefully about the risk of professionally enabling that individual to obscure who they really are. It's also important to understand that the Companies House IDV regime is not the same as the risk-based approach to client due diligence under the money laundering regulations. So you must follow all the steps in the Companies House guidance to meet the standard required. If you already have the necessary IDVT, the expertise and skills in-house, then providing the services may be something that can add value to your firm and clients. But if you need to purchase software or equipment and train up staff to the required levels, you should weigh the costs and risks involved in offering IDV services against the potential benefits. At ICAEW, we're continuing to highlight relevant updates from Companies House, as well as supporting our firms with further guidance material on key issues. You can watch our recent webinar and look out for the other AMLbites videos, which will cover topics such as ACSP registration and IDV requirements and challenges.